Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction, created purely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental. The story may include elements of suspense, emotional intensity, and psychological themes that may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. The content is not intended to promote fear, superstition, or harm, and should be interpreted as fictional storytelling only. It had been nearly 5 years since I last spoke to my cousin Marie. Life had pulled us in different directions, jobs, cities, relationships. But one rainy Thursday evening, my phone rang with her name flashing on the screen. My heart skipped. It was unexpected. I answered, half thinking it was a misdial. Her voice on the other end sounded different. She wasn't the loud, bubbly girl I remembered. Instead, she was soft-spoken, almost fragile. "Can you come over? Just for one night?" she asked quietly. I really need someone here." I asked what was wrong, but she deflected. Said it was just one of those days. I hesitated at first. It was a long drive and I had work in the morning. But there was something in her voice, a kind of desperation I couldn't ignore. So I packed an overnight bag, got in the car, and drove through the rainy evening toward her house in the suburbs. The place hadn't changed much. A small, 2-story home tucked away in a sleepy cul-de-sac. As I parked outside, I noticed how dark the windows were. Not a single light on except a dim yellow glow at the entrance. Marie greeted me with a weak smile. She looked tired, pale. Her once vibrant eyes were sunken, her hair slightly disheveled. She hugged me tighter than I expected. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. I asked how she was. She nodded, saying I'm okay, then quickly added, "Jake is upstairs. Don't worry if you don't see him." Jake, her son. He would be around 15 now. I hadn't seen him since he was a loud, hyperactive boy who loved to draw dinosaurs and superheroes. I smiled politely and told her I was looking forward to seeing him. As I stepped into the house, I noticed how unusually cold it was. The silence was heavy. The walls seemed to absorb every sound. Marie led me to the living room and offered me tea. She kept glancing at the stairs and then at the clock. Her nervous energy made me feel uneasy. I tried to break the tension with small talk, but she barely responded. When I asked about Jake again, she replied quietly, "He's been going through things lately. He mostly keeps to himself." That's when she said something strange. "Please, when you sleep tonight, lock the guest room door. Don't be alarmed. Just for your own comfort." I gave a nervous laugh, thinking she was joking, but her face was completely serious. It was already late, so I didn't push further. She showed me to the guest room, told me to rest, and said goodnight. As I lay in bed that night, I had no idea what was waiting for me in that house. Something wasn't right, and I could feel it creeping in from the shadows. I woke up early the next morning to the faint sound of dishes clinking in the kitchen. The house, while quiet, no longer felt cold, just eerily still. I got up, freshened myself, and made my way downstairs. Marie was there, dressed in a loose cardigan, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes looked empty, like someone holding herself together with threads. She placed a plate of toast and scrambled eggs in front of me and asked if I'd slept well. I nodded, though I didn't mention the strange dreams I had of footsteps pacing around the guest room door and whispering that felt like it came from the walls. We ate in silence for a few moments before I casually asked, "So, where's Jake?" "Still sleeping." Her eyes darted toward the stairs again. "He's upstairs. He doesn't come down much anymore." There was something sharp in the way she said it, like a warning. "Teenagers, right?" I tried to lighten the mood. She gave a weak smile but didn't answer. I pressed gently, asking if everything was okay between them. Marie sighed, stared at her coffee mug, and said, "He's different now. Ever since she stopped herself. It's just hard being a single mom sometimes." Her answers were vague and cold, and the more I tried to reach into her world, the more she pulled away. There was a distance between us that felt unnatural, considering how close we used to be growing up. I noticed her fingers trembling as she sipped from her mug. She kept glancing at the old wooden clock on the wall, as if counting the minutes. Later that day, I offered to help her with household chores. As I vacuumed the living room, I noticed several framed pictures on the wall had been removed, leaving behind only faded outlines. I asked about them. Marie shrugged. "Old memories. Not all of them good. There was a photo still remaining, one of Jake, but he looked younger, maybe around 10. Happy. Alive. His eyes were full of light. That version of him seemed miles away from the way Marie described him now. As evening approached, I again brought up the idea of saying hello to Jake, maybe even just a quick check-in. Marie's expression stiffened. "He'll come down if he wants to," she replied flatly. "But please, don't go upstairs." That was the second time she'd warned me about boundaries in this house. It felt less like concern and more like fear. I couldn't tell if she was protecting Jake from the world or protecting the world from Jake. That night, over dinner, the tension grew thicker. Every sound made her flinch. At one point, a floorboard creaked above us. Marie went pale. She whispered, "He's walking again." Her fork dropped from her hand. I asked if she wanted me to go up and talk to him. She grabbed my wrist firmly. "No," she said. "Never go to his room. He doesn't like strangers." My heart pounded. I didn't know what kind of home I had entered, but it didn't feel safe. When I returned to my room, I locked the door, not because she asked, but because for the first time in years I genuinely felt the need to. The silence in Marie's house had a texture to it, thick, almost oppressive. As the night deepened, it wrapped itself around the walls like a suffocating blanket. I tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come easily. The guest room was dimly lit by a small lamp in the corner, casting shadows that danced every time the wind brushed against the curtains. I kept the door locked, just as Marie had insisted, though that small detail haunted me now. Why would anyone need to lock themselves in a house this quiet, this seemingly harmless? I lay in bed, listening. The house wasn't just silent, it was too silent. No TV from Marie's room, no bathroom flushes, no night sounds. But around 1:47 a.m., that silence was pierced by something unmistakable, slow, deliberate footsteps. They started from the hallway and paused directly outside my door. My breath caught in my throat. The knob turned once, slowly, then stopped. I sat up, staring at it, frozen. For a moment, I thought maybe Marie had come to check on me, but I remembered the firmness in her voice earlier. "Don't go to his room. Lock your door." The air turned icy. After a full minute of silence, the footsteps moved on, this time lighter, fainter, almost like someone was tiptoeing. Then came a soft tapping from the other side of the wall, where Marie's room should be. It didn't sound like knocking, more like scratching. A gentle, deliberate, scraping sound. I pressed my ear against the cold wall and heard a faint, almost childlike voice whisper something. I couldn't make it out fully, but it sounded like, "Let me in." "I'm cold." I recoiled from the wall and backed into bed, covering myself with the blanket like I was 5 years old again. That same moment, the lamp flickered. Once. Twice. Then died. Complete darkness swallowed the room. I reached for my phone to use the flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on dead battery. I hadn't even used it that much. Then came the sound of breathing. Not mine. Not shallow. Deep, slow, raspy. Inside the room. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't move. For a full 5 minutes, I stayed like that, frozen, heart-hammering, ears tuned to every sound. Then, as quickly as it began, the air shifted. The cold left the room. The breathing stopped. When I finally turned on the flashlight from my emergency charger, the room was empty. But one thing was different. The guest room door, which I had locked myself, was now slightly ajar. I rushed to it, heart in my throat. The lock had been cleanly turned open from the inside. I pushed it shut, relocked it, and leaned against it, trembling. The idea of confronting Marie crossed my mind, but I didn't dare open the door again. Something was not right in this house. Something was walking in the dark. And I was no longer sure if Marie knew, or if she was simply pretending not to. The digital clock on the bedside table glowed a soft red. 2:18 a.m. I hadn't moved since locking the door again. I sat in bed with the covers pulled to my chest, back pressed against the headboard. My ears were sharp, catching every creak and moan of the old house. But for the moment, things were still again. I tried to convince myself it was all just the product of a tired mind. Stress, old memories, and a cousin acting strangely. But then, the doorknob turned again. Very slowly. Not jerky like someone trying to force their way in, but controlled, like someone who didn't need to rush. I felt the color drain from my face. I had locked it. I know I did. A soft click echoed through the room as the lock disengaged. I stared frozen as the door creaked open no more than a few inches. Just enough to see him. A boy. About 15. Pale skin, black hoodie, messy hair hanging in front of his eyes. He didn't move for a few seconds, he just stood there, half-shadowed in the doorway, staring into the room. His eyes were blank, almost glassy. Like he wasn't fully there. "Jake?" I said, voice shaking. He stepped into the room slowly, silently, and sat at the edge of the bed, his back to me. I didn't know what to do. Should I call Marie? Should I run? He wasn't doing anything threatening, but something felt wrong. He smelled faintly of damp clothes and cold earth. His breathing was strange, shallow, quick, like someone anxious but not fully alive. I whispered again. "Jake? Are you okay?" He didn't answer for a moment. Then he turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see part of his face in the dim glow. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. His voice was quiet. Not angry, just tired. "She doesn't tell people what really happened. You don't know who's living here anymore." My heart thundered in my chest. "What do you mean? Who's not telling what?" He suddenly stood up and walked toward the wall, placing his hand against it as if listening for something behind it. "She thinks I'm still him. But I'm not. Not anymore." I slowly got up from bed, unsure whether to comfort him or protect myself. "Jake, I don't understand. Can you help me understand?" He didn't turn around. He whispered, "Don't stay the night again. She's not my mom." Then, just like that, he walked out. I followed a few seconds later, peeking into the hallway. But it was empty. No sound. No footsteps. Not even the creak of the stairs. I checked Marie's door. It was open slightly and the light inside was on. I could hear her snoring softly. Like nothing had happened. I stepped back into my room, locked the door again, triple-checked it this time, and sat in stunned silence for the rest of the night. My cousin's son had just visited me in the middle of the night, spoken in riddles, and walked away like a ghost. But what disturbed me more than anything was the last thing he said: "She's not my mom." By morning, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. My eyes were heavy, but my thoughts were heavier. What had happened last night, Jake's visit, his strange words, the way he moved like a shadow instead of a boy, it kept replaying in my mind like a nightmare on loop. I waited for the sound of movement, for any sign that Marie was awake, but the house remained eerily still. Around 9 a.m. I stepped out into the hallway. The floorboards creaked under my feet, the same ones that had whispered footsteps hours earlier. I made my way to the kitchen, half hoping Marie would be there sipping coffee like everything was normal. She wasn't. Instead, there was a note on the counter: "Went to the market. Back in an hour. Jake's still asleep." I read that line over and over. Jake's still asleep. But Jake had been in my room just a few hours ago. Talking. Moving. Warning me. So what did that mean? Either Marie was lying or something else was going on. I took a chance. My instincts were screaming for answers and I had only a short window to find them. I tiptoed upstairs, heart pounding, and stood in front of the door Marie had told me never to open. Jake's room. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. No sound at all. I didn't open it. Instead, I went to the attic. The door was at the end of the hall, nearly hidden behind an old dresser. It was unlocked. Dust flew into the air as I pulled the cord for the overhead light. The attic smelled of mildew, old books, and forgotten things. Boxes were stacked high, some labeled, most not. I rummaged carefully until I found an old trunk pushed to the back corner. Inside were old photo albums, school report cards, and drawings, Jake's drawings. Dinosaurs, monsters, rocket ships. But then the tone of the drawings shifted. They grew darker. Pictures of shadowy figures watching from doorways. Scribbled faces. And then one drawing that made me gasp. A sketch of Marie. Her face, but twisted. Hollow eyes. A mouth stitched shut. Jake had written underneath in a child's messy scrawl, "Not her. She wears her skin now." My hands trembled as I pulled out a sealed folder wrapped in newspaper. Inside were old clippings from the local paper. I read the headlines with growing horror: "Local teen drowns in quarry, family in mourning, memorial held for Jake W. Gone too soon." What? Jake had died? 3 years ago? But I'd just spoken to him. I saw him. I stumbled back from the box, mind spinning. If Jake was dead, then who or what had been in my room last night? And what did he mean when he said Marie wasn't his mother? I found a neighbor's phone number scribbled on a torn envelope near the attic door. I called. An elderly woman answered. When I introduced myself and mentioned Marie and Jake, there was a long pause on the line. She finally whispered, "I don't know what's walking around in that house, but it isn't her son. And that's not your cousin anymore either. Please, for your sake, leave while you still can." She hung up before I could say another word. I stood there, phone trembling in my hand, heart pounding against my ribs. Suddenly, the attic light flickered, then turned off completely. The attic plunged into darkness. My breath hitched. The air grew heavy again, that same suffocating stillness I had felt in the guest room the night before. I stood frozen for a moment, listening. Nothing but silence, yet I felt I wasn't alone anymore. I fumbled for my phone flashlight and quickly made my way down from the attic, clutching the folder of newspaper clippings like it was a shield. I returned to the guest room and locked the door behind me. My thoughts were spiraling. Jake had died. The boy I spoke to was not Jake. And Marie? Could she be lying to herself, or was she lying to me? Or worse, was she even Marie anymore? A soft knock at the door broke my panic. It wasn't aggressive. Just 2 light taps. I stood motionless. Another knock came, this time followed by a whisper. "It's me." "Jake." I didn't answer. The whisper came again, trembling, sad. "I didn't mean to scare you. But I don't have long." Against all better judgment, I opened the door just a crack. He was there again, standing in the hallway, his eyes darker this time, his posture stiffer. "I'm not supposed to talk to people," he said. "But I needed to warn you." I stepped out, my voice barely audible. "Warn me about what?" Jake turned to look at the hallway. "She brought something back. When I died, she went to someone. Someone who promised her a way to see me again." His voice dropped lower. "But it wasn't me they brought back. It was something else, something that took my shape." He looked at me, his expression pained. "She let it in." My legs felt weak. "And what about her now?" Jake shook his head slowly. "She's still in there. Somewhere. But it's not just her anymore. It's living through her, feeding on her memories. It loves pretending. Playing house. But it hates strangers. People who notice the truth." I backed away, my mind refusing to accept the reality of what I was hearing. "Why are you telling me this?" He blinked slowly. "Because you're the first one to see me. The real me. And because you still have time to leave." Before I could ask anything else, he turned and walked down the hallway, vanishing into thin air right before my eyes, his form dissolving like smoke in sunlight. Just then, Marie's voice called out from the front door. "I'm back." I stepped down the stairs slowly, shaken, confused, unsure what to believe anymore. Marie stood in the kitchen, grocery bags in hand, smiling like everything was normal. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "I saw you open the attic," she said suddenly, her smile fading. I froze. I hadn't told her. "You know, some things are better left alone," she said, setting the last bag down. "People get confused when they dig into the past." There was a coldness in her tone now. She looked me dead in the eyes. "Do you feel confused?" I forced a small smile. "Not really. Just tired, that's all." She stared at me for a long time. Then her smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good," she said. "We hate it when guests get too curious." I barely slept that night, lying in bed fully clothed, ready to leave at the first opportunity. The house was no longer just eerie, it was dangerous. Something was wrong with Marie. Or whatever was wearing Marie's face. The way she spoke, the calculated smile, the threat hidden under sweet words, it wasn't her. Not the cousin I grew up with. Around midnight, I heard movement again. But this time, it wasn't footsteps. It was a dragging sound. Slow. Deliberate. Like something being pulled across the wooden floor outside my door. And then came the knock. 3 sharp taps. I sat up. My heart raced. I didn't answer. Then Marie's voice came, low and soft. "Why are you hiding from me?" I stayed silent. "You talked to him, didn't you?" she said from the other side of the door. Her voice had a strange duality to it now, like 2 voices overlapping. Hers and something beneath it. Older. Cruel. I stepped back from the door, clutching the old photo I had found in the attic, the real Jake smiling in the sunlight. I held it tight and whispered, "You're not her. And he's not here anymore." The voice outside laughed, an unnatural hollow sound. "That's where you're wrong. I am here. And he still is too." Suddenly, the doorknob shook violently, the old wood trembling in its frame. The lock clicked once, then unlocked itself. I had used the backup latch. I backed away fast. The door creaked open. Marie stood there. Or something that looked like her. Her skin was too pale now, stretched too tight across her face. Her eyes were darker than I remembered, bottomless, as if something ancient was staring out from behind them. "You don't belong here," she said coldly. "I know," I replied, lifting the photo. "And neither does he." The entity paused. Its face twitched. A flicker of emotion passed, anger, confusion, maybe pain. I stepped forward and began speaking aloud, everything I had learned. Jake's real name, the date of his death, the obituary details. The truth. "You're not him," I said to the shadow that lingered behind her. "And she's not yours to control anymore." The room seemed to grow colder. The walls creaked. Lights flickered. Marie's body convulsed once, then again. She dropped to her knees, clutching her head. A shriek burst from her lips, not hers, but something else. An inhuman scream that echoed through the halls. The windows rattled. The photo in my hand grew hot, and the air shimmered like fire and ice colliding. Then silence. Marie collapsed to the ground unconscious. The light steadied. The cold vanished. I stood there, shaking, unsure if it was over or just beginning. Moments later, I knelt beside her. Her face was different now, exhausted but peaceful. I whispered her name. She opened her eyes slowly. "Jake," she said weakly. "No, it's me," I replied. "He's gone. It's over." She began to cry, not hysterical sobs, but quiet, aching tears of release. She finally remembered everything. The ritual, the mistake, the years of denial, and the dark thing that had crawled into her house when grief left the door open. The morning light poured through the curtains like a blessing. Warm, golden, soft. It was the first time the house had felt alive since I arrived. The silence that once felt menacing was now simply silence. Marie sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea with both hands like she was afraid to let go. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but they were hers again, human, present, and filled with the kind of sadness that only comes from finally facing the truth. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. There was a quiet understanding between us now, something built in the ashes of fear and grief. She had lived with that thing for years, fed it, believed in it, let it wear her son's face just to feel close to him again. But grief is a strange beast. It makes you believe the unbelievable. And sometimes it opens doors that were never meant to be opened. I packed my things slowly, giving her time. She finally spoke when I reached the door. "Will you come back?" she asked, her voice thin. "Not to stay. Just to check in." I nodded. "Yes. But you have to promise me something first." She looked up. "No more rituals. No more pretending. Jake's gone and he deserves peace. And so do you." She gave a shaky smile. "I know. I missed him so much." "I know," I said gently. We hugged, and this time it felt real. No tension, no secrets pressing between us. Just two women trying to recover from something far bigger than either of them could explain. As I stepped outside, the fresh air filled my lungs like I was breathing for the first time in days. The sky was clear, not a single cloud. I got into my car, started the engine, and glanced up at the house one last time. And that's when I saw him. In the second-floor window, just beside the guest room, stood the figure of a boy. Pale. Still. Watching. But he wasn't glaring. He wasn't threatening. He was simply there. He raised one hand slowly. A wave. Like a goodbye or maybe a thank you. And then, just like that, he vanished. I don't know what that meant. Maybe it was one last echo of him. Maybe something still lingers in that house. Or maybe some part of Jake never left, waiting for his mother to finally let go. As I drove away, I knew one thing for certain: some houses carry grief like a second soul. Some people wear pain like skin. And some stories, no matter how hard you try to forget them, will stay with you forever. This was one of them. 11.